Ngalakin Khadijan Nyunga Boja.
That you can see, there's this other stuff, goodwill, brand, intangible asset. Don't know how it didn't make it into the deal, very famous case, look it up, someone got a severe reaming. So that's what happens. You lose opportunity, you create additional risk for the business, and you're not in a position to leverage to the same extent that others are. The EPO, the European Patent Office, recently did a study. The basic outcome was companies that have got IP earn 20% more in terms of profit than those that don't. Their employees are paid 15% more than their rivals, just because IP is there, is adding value, is being harnessed. So having a patent and not having a patent is often really significant in terms of longevity, what you can make out of that business. And my final slide, where do patent attorneys come from? So yep, that's supposedly a picture of me. It's pretty old because it's black hair now, not grey. And no, I'm not gloating about all the money I've got, although like any job, you stick around long enough, the patent profession does pay well. I came from here. So I was an electrical electronic engineering student at UWA in the late 80s, and when I graduated, had no idea what I wanted to do, but I did know that I didn't want to write code. I did that as my 3 months work experience and thought, I don't want to be writing software, this is horrible. I ended up in a patent attorney firm, didn't know what a patent was, didn't know what a patent attorney was, but I ticked the boxes. I had a technical qualification, and it's typically an engineering or a science or a chemistry, something where you can interpret devices, treatments, solutions, and over time, with enough practice, translate them into legal documents. You go off, you do more tertiary education, post-grad exams. Back then it was 8 exams, 4 intermediaries and 4 final exams. You get registered as a patent attorney, and you stick around long enough and you become the principal of a firm. That's where patent attorneys come from. We're not lawyers, so I guess I was an engineer. I've got the certificate that says I graduated from here. I'm not a lawyer. Technical qualification. There are some people who do have the dual qualification, and they are patent attorneys and IP lawyers. Very common in the US, reasonably rare in Australia. So if anyone's going, I don't know what I'm going to do with my engineering degree, but in research, I remember we filed a patent, that was semi-interesting. There's opportunities in the patent space. But the patent person is a technical person. We just learn about a specialist area of law. The easiest way I can describe it to you is patent attorney is to lawyer as dentist is to doctor. So the doctor knows all about biology, everything, even knows a little bit about oral and gum health. But he won't do extractions and he won't do teeth cleans. That's the realm of the dentist. That's their specialty area. Dentist knows generally about human bile, focuses on gums and teeth. Patent attorneys are the same. Lawyers can't go file patents. They know about patent law and the patent space, but patent attorneys have the exclusive right to file patents on behalf of their clients. We know about general areas of law that impact IP, like copyright and trade secrets, that sort of general law area. And the general lawyers will tell you about that, but they don't cross over where we are. We can't go to court and act in front of a judge or anything like that. At the end of the day, we're engineers, we're not lawyers. And with that, one more. I call this the no mates device. So you're watching TV, it's an American one, so I've got to put on my American. You're watching the gridiron, there's a touchdown. The inventor, let's say your name's Albert, but it's not me, it's some guy called Albert Cohen, coincidentally. You want to high five someone when there's a touchdown. You're a patent attorney, you don't have any mates. You're watching it on your own. That's all right. On the wall, bolted onto the wall in your lounge, there's this baby. And you can run up to it and get the high five and get the little reaction from the spring mechanism. Fantastic. I still haven't seen that. Not in any market that I'm aware of, even if it does sport my name, partly as the inventor. So that's about it. I hope I haven't bored you. I hope I have left you with some snippets around what IP is and what's important. I'm happy to share a copy of the slide deck if anyone wants to see it. And my contact details are there if anyone's ever got a patent question or an IP question. happy to help if I can, and if it's not me, there's other people in my firm and elsewhere that happy to have a chat and make sure you're doing the right thing. Cheers, everyone.
Any questions?
Yeah, front row.
This is Adrian Feeding, my co-unit coordinator.
So you've just summarised 25 years of my life. So much of what you covered, I'm going, you're going to touch on trade secrets? There it is. You're going to touch on CDAs? There it is. So much of what you've just talked about is the life of an engineer. You may think none of this is relevant to you, but every single aspect that you've touched on you will come across in your career. So if you were bored shitless for this talk, get over it, because you need to kind of understand some of these issues. So just wonderful, I have to say.
Thanks. Often it's just about asking the right question at the right time. No one's expecting you to be a pseudo patent attorney, but just recognising something and going, I wonder if anyone's done that, or can we protect that? And exploring that further, maybe with some external advice, can be the difference between getting sued, getting blocked, or making money. So asking the question is often all we're trying to do, get people to do.
So ask a question. All right, so I take a patent in Australia, not in China, and someone in China decides to rip it off. They can sell as much as they want in the US and China.
Correct.
My product.
Correct.
They are just restricted from then selling in Australia. Is that their only restriction?
Correct. Yep. So you get regional protection. So if you've got an Australian and a New Zealand and a Papua New Guinea patent, they can do whatever they like in the rest of the world. They can't patent it themselves because you've already patented it. It's not novel anymore. It'll be published. So you can't repatent something, most countries. But yeah, you only get protection, make, use or sell in your jurisdiction.
So who's breaking the law? Maybe this is outside of your scope. Once that product enters Australia, the importer or the manufacturer?
It could be both. So there's something called contributory infringement. So it might be the provider, but it might be the person who asked for that bit to be brought in competition.
So as the engineer, if I bring in something that's been manufactured patented by a competitor in Australia, made in China, stolen by someone in China, I see it on eBay in China, that's great, I'm going to buy it from there at half the price and import it, I could be breaking the law.
Possibly, yep. You would want to work out what the rules say. If it's an engineering relationship where you've had them build something and they've copied something, you want to make sure the contract says, you warrant that you do not breach any third-party IP rights with your activities or the products. Look, the answer is always it depends, because it's always about what's the scenario, what's been going on, what's already here, is the patent in force, is it dead? So there's generally a story you have to map out, but yep, the user, the end user, could be liable for infringement.
And so I want to grab you for, you talked about copyright, which I thought was really interesting. Non-fungible tokens. All right, there's these kind of new concepts of protecting digital media and digital ideas in these kind of tokens. How do they play in this space?
Yeah, so the IP systems typically take a while to catch up. So even the patent system is only just getting its head around business method patents and SAS and stuff like that, because it was born out of the Industrial Revolution, where it was machines and it was bits and we could see what it was. So often the law is playing catch up and it doesn't for a while protect, or it ends up, bringing case law into the courts where a judge starts to decide and says, you know what, you can protect this thing. There is no interaction between the computer and the phone, but we think it can be patented. I think copyright is going to be the same. It's well known at the moment that we protect different forms of expression. So if there's an argument that, these tokens are a form of expression and that expression might be copied, there's going to be a copyright case at some point, and a clever judge will determine yes or no. And at some point, there will be an amendment to the Act that specifically captures it. But otherwise, well out of my realm. The Copyright Act is like 300 pages. It's a horrible read. The IP lawyers can have that. I'll stick to, my world of inventions and trademarks. Yep. Sorry, was someone else? Yeah.
So, I can't remember exactly which one, but the trademark that protects what it looks like.
Yep.
The design.
Oh, the registered design?
Design.
Yep.
Is that just what it looks like from the outside, or is it like every component?
It's typically what it looks like from the outside, but let's say it's a complex assembly. It's a machine with different bits, and some of those bits have to have a particular shape. You can get a registration for the lever arm or the cog or whatever it might be. So even though when the machine is built and that cog's being used, you can't see it, if a replica machine uses that same cog or arm or screen or whatever, yeah, there might be some protection there. Yeah.
Let's say it's a startup business. How early do you file a patent for technology you're trying to make when you don't
Have any money?
buy or product it?
Yep, beautiful catch-22, one that haunts us forever. Before you publish, so publication and commercial use basically destroys novelty. If you think about the true meaning of novelty, it hasn't been done before, and that's the test the examiner's looking for if you file a patent application and it gets examined. So if you've already used it, if you've already made money from it, or if you've put it into a paper or disclosed it at a symposium at SAE or something, that's destroying novelty. So if any of those are on the horizon of the startup, you need to be thinking about, if we want to try and get exclusive rights, we need to do it before then. It might be that you go, you know what, we just don't have the money to fund this. We need to do this publication, we need to do this trial to get the money. We'll focus on the improvement. There's always going to be an improvement and enhancement as we learn more. We'll let the first broad invention just get out there, but we'll make sure that that improvement, the one that really makes it saleable or interesting to a customer, we'll protect that. But yeah, it's a great question. It's a catch-22. Often it's just a balancing act, you know. Can we get enough funds to do an early stage first part application which gives us 12 months pending protection, and in that 12 months let's get that backer, let's get that big brother, the funder, who can then help us do the next bit of those filings. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. Yeah, and you're in the world of copyright and trade secrets.
Can I just add? Hats off to you for actually thinking about startup in any way. Most of our students say, I want a job in mining industry, right? So the fact that you're actually thinking beyond that, whether you're thinking about doing a startup or you're just thinking about startups, is a great thing for Australia as a whole. So thank you.
And the two biggest things for a startup, if I can jump in, understand your IP landscape. So there's a lot of free hours that you can put into searching and find out what's already out there and what can you can harness for your business. Do that. Often saves people loads of hassle, loads of wasted time. And capture your solutions right from the beginning. If you can get that practice going, when you then have the discussion about what can we protect, which is more valuable, what have we got that's know-how, what's background IP, you're already worlds ahead than most companies. The way it typically works is the startups beaver away, they do all the sexy stuff, and I get it, it's much more fun doing the technical invention development stuff than worrying about the admin. And it's just as they're about to do a deal that someone says, so have you guys thought about protecting this? And there's this back capture activity that's horrid, and people have left, and we had this guy, he did some coding for us, and we're not sure if that's ours. But if from the word go, you just start capturing IP, and every time you do an external relationship with a developer or a collaborator, you're thinking about, have I got access to that IP? Do I own it? You're going to save yourself loads of pain. Yeah.
You're not talking about our research group, right?
Not yours. You guys have got a commercialisation office who, they sort of know what they're doing. I know there's only a few of them. Yeah.
Publications, universities tend to push the publication. So.
Yeah, the big thing that we tell students and researchers is publications and protecting IP do not have to be mutually exclusive. Some people think, if I'm going to publish, I can't get a patent. Well, it's true. But sometimes you can get the patent filing happening just at the same time or before the publication, and you can get the best of both worlds. So they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah, most do it the hard way. Yeah. Yeah.
Some products have patents saw the logo for that at the start. Does that actually hold any protection at that point in time?
It doesn't. It just alerts the user that someone is chugging through the system, and at some point a patent might drop out. So it's a bit of a warning saying, copy if you like, but at some point in the near future I might have a patent, at which point I can backdate a claim right back to the early filing of my patent. And if you've jumped in after that, we have to have a discussion about breaching patent rights and licensing and royalties. That's what patent pending is doing.
So even if a competitor came in and made a similar product at that time when it was pending, you say it's a year or so until it gets approved, then that company can backdate.
Yep. Yeah, it's always a depends. When did they come in? When did you file your patent? But if they've come in after you filed your application and there's some copying that's gone on, yep, you can backdate all the way to the filing. So there's a damages claim that looks retrospectively.
Question.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting last week with someone obviously in the biosciences, but a statement came out that the lifetime of a patent, the 20 years, by the end of that, if you haven't brought in revenue to cover your costs, you can actually extend the lifetime of the patent. Is that true?
So for some areas you can. So pharmaceuticals in particular. So if you're in the bio group, yeah, if it's taking you 20 years to get approval for your drug and your patents run out, there is an extension that's possible, and there's a bunch of things that will dictate how long that extension is, but I think it's up to 5 years.
Right.
So you can then at least get 5 years worth of, everyone has to come to me for the Viagra drug or whatever it is. Yeah, but typically not the case in our engineering space. Yeah, we're sort of stuck with it's 20 years, it's 20 years. In our space it moves pretty quick, so something which has been covered and protected has probably been re-engineered and changed. You think about laptops and processing power. So often patents don't run their course. Yep. Often after 8-9 years, people have said, you know what, that's not relevant anymore. The tech has moved us to here. We've got a new patent filing, and off we go with that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Trade secrets. They're probably the biggest ones that we work with because they're the easiest ones.
Sure.
To start with. They rely on the don't tell. But then you talk about non-disclosures, protecting yourself with non-disclosures. I've always been taught non-disclosures are just as dangerous because if you learn something from a company, you're now bound not to repeat that. And so it puts certain obligations on the engineer to try and forget the information that they were given in case they might accidentally use it in their design. So we kind of go, never sign an NDA. Just don't tell me anything that might be important. Do you have a feeling about that?
Yeah, we get that. Look, it depends on circumstance and the scenario, but a good NDA will take into account what is already known, what is already out there in the public domain so that you can't be encumbered. But there is a risk. If you say, look, we think you've got some clever stuff that we might benefit from, often you have to be very clear in the NDA and say, look, this is what we understand in this space, this is what you understand, and then we can talk. Because without that, this is our background knowledge, you might get the risk of, they tell you something and you go, oh, we've already been working on that secretly in our own labs. And like you say, now they're going to think that when we go public with our own solution, so it has to have the right words in there about it was already in our possession and we can prove it and all of that stuff. And a good NDA will have that in there. Look, an NDA is just another barrier in the way of the rival, the copier. It's not the be-all and end-all. You know, if you think about putting a confidential stamp as one barrier and having an NDA and having some copyright and then getting a patent, they're all barriers. None of them are actually going to stop people copying if they really want to copy, but there's so many deterrents there that if it happens and you go to court and you can point to all of them, you're in a better position than if you did none of them and said, oh, this person copied. That's the classic with China. You talk to Chinese patent attorneys and all they get is people moaning about how the Chinese system's not that flash and they'll copy anyway, and they say, do us a favour, file a patent. We'll defend your patent in the Chinese courts. The Chinese will respect patent rights. But if you don't file it and people copy, yeah, they copy. That's what they do. So, but use the IP system. You know, we will stand up and we will, you know, run patents through the courts. We will defend them.
Another thing with NDAs, particularly in an organisation like this, it's only valuable when everyone knows that the NDA is in place.
Yeah, it certainly helps if everyone involved.
Yes.
Yep. Well, first, everyone is covered and captured by the NDA, so that's a common one. People will often just say, oh, I just make it out with me, but they'll be part of a big research team that they then share it with. So it's got to cover the right group. And yeah, people need to be aware that, hey, we have an NDA. So be careful not only what you're saying, but be careful about what you're receiving. Because there might be rules that it has to be stamped, or if it's a verbal discussion, it needs to be followed up in 15 days by an email or some written form. So, and every time you don't do that, yeah, someone's falling foul and it gives them an out if there's ever an issue.
Sometimes when we've got an NDA, it's between the university and some organisation that doesn't mention our names.
Yep.
Right? It comes through, and then we're working, and then if Adrian's not working in this, and I just have a chat to him about, look, this is cool stuff. And I'm technically not violating the NDA because it's still within the organisation. But unless Adrian knows this is under NDA, he can go and talk.
He might do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just that good IP, you know, management stuff. People just being on the ball, communicating. We need to keep it a secret. We've got rules in place. Beware. Yeah, but you're no different than, you know, corporations and businesses. It's the same. The number of times someone would come into my office and go, I think I need an NDA with this entity, but we've already got one. What are you talking about? What have you said and what have they given us? And yeah.
Any other comments? Questions? Still nobody asking anything online? It's great stuff. It's great.
Well, good.
Don't know why.
Yeah, talk about kind of students wanting real world experience in engineering. This is it. This is, you know.
So we never learned this as undergrads or even postgrads, right?
Neither did I.
We made the mistakes.
Yeah. I told you, I went and got a job with a patent attorney firm and I had to look up what patent meant. Why do these people want an engineer? What's a patent attorney? So I knew nothing out of my 4 years of engineering. Nothing at all.
You're the second engineer I've known who's gone into patent law.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, they need technical specialists
Yeah.
who understand how to read a patent so that
Yep.
they can help guide through things.
Yep.
On the same token, don't assume a patent attorney understands all the technical details of anything
absolutely.
you try to.
Absolutely.
There's so much out there, right? The process of a patent can be quite extended, and lots of discussions between the patent attorney and the group of inventors. It's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, so that both sides understand everything about both sides.
Absolutely. And if you're not getting that back and forth and the questions, think about who your patent attorney is, because, you know, the specialist knows this much. The patent attorney is a generalist. I've done an engineering degree. Electronic is my specialty, but I don't know the specifics about whatever, optoelectronics or whatever. You know, someone's a specialist. So when they talk, engineers talk at that real specialist level. The patent attorney is a generalist, and if they're not asking lots of questions and I need some diagrams, and no, tell me again, be very careful. Unless you've just hit the right patent attorney who happens to have done an honours degree in whatever you're specialising in, but it doesn't work that way. And then it's the same with the patent examiners that we're talking to. So the patent examiners are generalists as well. They've done an engineering degree, but they're not a specialist. And we're trying to talk about complex stuff, and they're just saying, well, no, I don't think so. And you're going, well, hang on. You know, you got no knowledge of engine control and, you know, fluid dynamics inside a cylinder or whatever, yet you're passing judgment on our patent. So that's the life of the patent attorney, having that argument at that level and saying, no, let me educate you on how it really works. And that's what you guys as researchers and specialists should be doing with the patent attorney. Let me tell you how it is. You know, in copious detail.
Yep. same way the other side, we can't change the wording any way we feel fit, because then it won't cover everything either. So there's a lot of learning on both sides.
Nuance
to repair.
in the legal words.
Absolutely.
It's a very interesting process, I have to say. All right, anyone else?
If you have, go home and get inspired with ideas or thoughts, write them down. Flip them,
Yeah, reach out.
Yeah.
Reach out if you've got any questions. We're like doctors. Anything you tell us is covered by confidentiality. So, client, attorney privilege.
You don't even need an NDA.
Not with us, no. Yeah, but people still ask, and we say, well, we don't really need it. Do you get your doctor to sign an NDA when you go there and get your infected toe looked at? We're the same. Same as lawyers. Only on that bit. Otherwise, we don't really.
Reese, I think you should take the move forward. Okay.
Happy to help, guys.
Thanks again.
Pleasure.
Okay. So we'll continue on to the info session.
Should we have stop and start the link?
No, I've
Thanks.
emailed everyone
Oh.
during the middle, basically saying, yep, that's the,
Keep on.
basically saying we're going to continue on the same way.
Okay, so very loud.
Thank you very much, Albert.
Thanks, Al. Cheers. Great work. Turn down the volume because I think I'm sounds like I'm screaming at you. So there were about 3 new questions on the LMS question site. I jumped on earlier today and addressed them. I don't think there was anything special. There were some questions about can we have fixed IP addresses? And I think the answer is everything that's wired is a fixed IP, but they can't assign fixed IP for wireless systems. It doesn't work. So, any other questions about requirements, things that I can answer? See if there's any questions on the chat. Hey, I have a question about the final report. Would you be able to clarify proof of concept tests and how they differ from tests in the recommendation sections? To my understanding, those in the recommendations are tests done after prototyping. All right, so I'll pass that to Delucia when he comes back in the room. As he set the original. Here he comes. Delucia, could you have a quick read of the question that's been posted? I think you're best placed to address that one.
Second one?
Yeah.
Question about the phone. Would you be able to clarify proof of concept tests and how they differ from tests in the recommendation section? To my understanding, the recommendations are tests done after prototyping. Okay. Basically, we had a pretty long discussion about testing at the last info session. There is no prototype in this unit, so there is no prototype test that you can do. As much as we talked about last week, essentially the only testing you can do is essentially look at your design and say, what test can I do to that design, for that design to validate that it actually meets my requirements? Does that answer the question? Thank you. Yes, I think so. How will interviews be structured in this week's meetings? Interviews are actually next week, not this week. Interviews, the way they happen is the students either stand outside the room or they're in the Zoom meeting. They get pulled in either physically to the room or into a breakout room in the team meetings. And the discussion happens one-on-one between the supervisor and the student. It's a private discussion. The supervisor does record it, just in case there's a disagreement in the mark, so that it can be presented as okay, this is why the supervisor made these decisions on the mark, but nobody outside the nobody outside the teaching team will ever see that. At the end of the semester, once the marks go through and there are nobody complaining about the mark, those will then get deleted. No other student will ever see that. Actually, nobody outside the teaching team will ever see that. Okay, all good now. Any other questions? Yep. Yep.
Our supervisor said something about we have to make up a work instruction for the actual device, so like putting together the device, crimping wires and stuff.
So if you've gone to the stage of a component level design, then that might be of value, right? But most designs that I've seen are somewhat higher level than that, and that is not relevant at that stage.
So it's an option.
It is an option if you've gone to that level. I have seen one project that I reviewed during the presentations, design reviews, which had gone almost to that point. And for them, it would be icing on the cake, essentially, to do that kind of thing.
So it's not necessary to produce like a bill of materials and go through work instructions?
Not a bill of materials, because this is a high-level design that we're talking about, but a list of modules that you think. So if you've picked an Arduino as your main thing, main processor, okay, this is this particular Arduino with this amount of memory, that kind of thing is valuable, is important.
There was a question further up from Stephen. Has Craig updated you, Adrian, with a cost breakdown for the Gallagher system? So I just checked my emails. No, he hasn't. And the response that he originally gave were these costs are usually part of the capital cost of a refurbishment, and I don't have direct access. I'll ask. My guess is he's not going to get a response, and he's not going to be able to get a response. So, so the cost breakdown, you're not going to get a cost breakdown of the Gallagher system for what does it, what does access costs. So more specifically, the fees UWO pay to use the Gallagher APIs, no idea. And I doubt very much you'll get a number on that.
So the understanding I had from what Craig said before was that there was no cost if you're building something. We have access
within the system.
Within UWA.
Yeah. So I mean, the Gallagher system runs within our network here, and so I don't see any reason why there would be a bill per data grabbed through that API. It's really the hardware install and the server that was originally set up to run that system. They're your infrastructure costs. That's kind of a one-time. That's what Craig's meaning by a refurb costs.
But that's not included in your system anyway, right?
Yep.
It's available for you.
But I just got a quote this morning for Thomas is trying to get a card reader for the Makers Robotics Lab interface. So I just got an estimate of what they're currently charging for one of those.
These ones?
Yeah. I thought.
$2,000.
It's a little different, but I thought I'll hide that because I don't think we should be publishing with a couple of weeks to go before delivery what current costs are, because but they're expensive. It's it's not. It's a different scale of problem, right? So that card reader is although different students sound like different teams are taking different solutions. That's one access point for an entire room that services hundreds of people walking in and out. We're talking about
things on equipment where there could be one piece of equipment in the room or there could be dozens of equipment in the room. It's unclear how the cost would scale in terms of these the systems that you're looking at. Anything else?
Has Craig updated you, Adrian, with the cost break? Oh, it's the same.
Yeah, there's a question that was further up, and I addressed that one. Sorry. Thanks, Dave. Interesting. The process of writing requirements will never end. I think I had a separate discussion with Craig Williams earlier 2 weeks ago, trying to get a server set up for the E-Zone. And his first thing was, do you have a requirements document? Hang on, Craig, I'll just write you one. So up all night for the next couple of days, send it out to a couple of colleagues. Can I have some feedback? Can you check the scope of this? Can you make sure that I haven't, asked for too much or too little? Blah blah blah. Is it going to cover our needs? Blah blah blah. Get feedback. Mad typing away. Boom, fired off to Craig. So one of many umpteen requirements documents that needs to be written over the lifespan of your engineering career. So see if we can get down to just one person turning up. For those on LMS, there are a total of 4 people in the audience. Given there was Albert and Delucia and I, we almost outnumbered the number of students in the room. So come on by, we're COVID free. So it's good to see your face and get to ask questions and be on campus. The coffee shop's going to open up soon in the E-Zone. Should be another couple of weeks, I think. They're only like 2 weeks away from opening. That'll be fun. Yep, but no, you wait. It'll be the busiest coffee shop on campus. Better have good coffee, I'll tell you now, and muffins. What else? Go, questions.
Are there lectures next week?
My memory was no. I was trying.
So what does the schedule say?
No.
If the schedule says no,
Yeah, there's no.
do you want lectures?
So
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I've said most of the speakers that have been lined up are freaking hot as, and so it's really valuable to get that kind of. I don't know how you assess that. Let's have a test on that. No, if you're online, we're not going to do that. But how do you? I mean, it's just as relevant as everything else that we teach. But some things you're kind of going, it needs to be an experience-driven course.
2 years ago, I actually had quizzes. This was 555-2. I had a quiz in every lecture. That could only be done during the time of the lecture. I think there was a 15-minute slot after the lecture that you could.
Was that designed to bring people into the venue?
Was designed to bring people into the venue and keep people away.
Yeah, but Tim Tams and coffee do the same thing. If you offered free food, I reckon you get just as many students as running a quiz. It's my 2 cents. I don't know.
You try putting that into the unit budget.
Yeah, I know. You have to take some for the team sometimes and just pay it out of your own pocket because you're not going to get it through unit budgets. I think there's
2 years ago, I actually had a $30 box of chocolates for every speaker.
Yeah.
As a thank you.
Yeah. No, you have to just fund that yourself. I would have been happy to fund some of that. Yeah. Quizzes, all right. We should look at quizzes next year.
Question on the report, right? So, one of the pointers was the design philosophy including justification for recommended architecture traced to requirements.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
So one of the design points in the report guide was go for it. Yeah, so one of the requirements in the report guide was to have design philosophy including justification for recommended architecture traced to requirements. So in terms of design philosophy, I think what our team has kind of looked into was like how are we supposed to accomplish the design and the principles we use to accomplish the design, so the architecture per se. However, how do we actually write up something to address the architecture like that?
The word philosophy is the word philosophy is a bit of a fuzzy word, right? And the reason is this isn't the type of technical unit that you're used to. So what it's looking for is your thought process. Rather than saying, okay, I'll just stick a Raspberry Pi to do this, right? How did you get from your requirements to a Raspberry Pi to achieve your requirements, right? So that's the sort of underlying thought process is what it's after. And I think that's sort of what you were saying. Yes?
I guess so, because I think because we had you for
Yes.
our design was kind of like safe, very well balanced kind of.
Yes.
Is that how supposed to approach and justify that?
Yeah. So if you decided to minimize risks in your approach and come up with a very safe design, and I do remember that, making that comment, that is what you need to put down. Now, some people took risks. That's okay. Came up with way out there concepts. And again, they need to demonstrate the thought process as to why they did that.
So if you know, one group was looking at batteries. So if just using the Raspberry Pi as a really singular example,
Yes, I
right? You know, if a safe design, by safe I'm assuming you mean a design that allows you to reconfigure, change it as the process goes along?
No, when I said safe, I meant not taking too many risks in the design process. So this is what we're trying to achieve. What's the clearest way of building it without coming up with out there ideas?
Right.
Right. That's what I meant by a safe design.
Okay. But if every little module is going to have a Raspberry Pi in it, for example, then battery life is not your optimization criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise it would be, I'm going to build a single chip Arduino with maybe an SD card that,
Mm-hmm.
and have a real-time clock, and it wakes up only when absolutely necessary. And so you really could get the current draw down to microamps, in standby state. That's never going to happen with a Raspberry Pi. It's on all the time. Okay, so all right, so that wasn't part of your, that wasn't part of your optimization. You made choices based on, the flexibility that the Pi would give you, as an example.
Yep.
Right? So there were choices made. Every choice comes with that, generally, trade-off or compromise, right? There's rarely one technology you want. This is the sweetest technology to use. This is great. Arduino, memory limit. It's not a lot of memory. It's not much computational stuff you can do on board. So you're really going to, if you want to access APIs and stuff, maybe there's a library, but you're really going to have to be careful because you can't load too much in before you ran out of memory. And, maybe you have to start looking at, some mid-ground between an Arduino, just a 328. Maybe you use an ESP. Maybe so. There's lots of, but they're just the electrical side of things. And you might take the same kind of optimization or decision making around the hardware interface, the software interface, the system architecture. Is it a star? Is it a ring? Is it, there's a million choices you make, and every one of those, I suppose, it's just about.
So the battery is a good example that Adrian raised, right? So I've seen some teams really go hard on the battery, and I've seen some teams say, well, you're talking about a lab environment, why bother with the battery? You've got power, right? So Again, that's your design philosophy. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Cha cha cha. It's good.
Regarding land costs and tendering for the final design, is it recommended, requested by the client to go into detail using minutes in the readings about predicted costs before hiring someone to assemble our design? I would say no for this one. Not for 555 552. It's good for you to know what's in the unit readings to help you in 552 to do that kind of thing, but I wouldn't go into labour costs for this, because you're not expected to have a fabricatable, is that the word? Fabricable design, right? What you're expected to have is a high-level design, which is doesn't contain a bill of materials essentially. So if you don't have a bill of materials, how are you going to expect somebody to put it together?
And the first 100 you build are always, they're like stupidly expensive. You never make money from the first 100. Or depending on the scale thing. I suppose you build the Challenger space shuttle, maybe 100's a bit too many, but there's always this kind of we covered kind of non-recurring engineering costs, NREs. Right, so there's one-off costs that you have with any kind of setup, but again, I think we've said before, how much does something cost? Tell me how many you want to buy or how many you want to sell. So if the number's 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, at some point you go, making it in the Australian market is too expensive. Labour costs are just too high. Once we hit some break point, you could probably do an estimate of it. You're better off sending it offshore to be made somewhere else. But then there's issues of quality control when it goes offshore, and so.
Another question for Adrian. Could you further clarify the status of the IoT network rollout in eZone at the moment? Have people managed to connect to this?
IoT is great. So the IoT network, all you've got to do is, there's a web portal, and I'm trying to understand how we're advertising that web portal to the general community. And at the moment, I don't think we have one. So I will find some details about it, and I will put it up on the LMS site. But in general, I want to advertise those details way beyond this forum. It's for all students to use. But it's as simple as if you have the MAC address of a piece of equipment, you simply jump onto an online portal at UWA, you enter the MAC address, it registers the MAC address of that device. That device can then access the IoT network. It is a one-way network, so it allows information to be kind of, how does it go? You can receive information, but I don't believe you can push information out from that site. So it's just designed to, I believe that's how it's designed to run.
Is this the IBMS?
No, it's got nothing to do with the IBMS. So within the eZone, if you've got any kind of Wi-Fi bit and piece, you walk around, you'll see a Wi-Fi network called the IoT network pop up in the eZone. It's only available around the eZone. It's not part of the wider campus, but you never know if it becomes popular enough. Hopefully we'll get there. And accessing it is all you've got to do is have the MAC address of the equipment, your Raspberry Pi, your computer, whatever it is, and you can then access it. So you can then leave the device to data log, grab, and just connect. Hopefully that answers the question. I'll post something on LMS because I don't know the website, but it's on my computer somewhere. But we have to advertise that more widely.
Okay, another one.
Cheers, guys.
overview of how we communicate. So the question to me is, can I elaborate on what is expected for the community notification section of 1E for the final report? Is this a brief overview of how we will communicate designs, implementation to the end user? That's roughly getting to what we would expect. So that sort of extends beyond the stakeholder analysis you would have done at the beginning of the unit. And you basically build on that to essentially say, okay, these are the people who are affected by it. How do we get the appropriate information across to them? Does that make sense? And what information do we need to get across to them? Okay. I don't think they were Albert's either. Albert didn't go there. So, previous lecture maybe. What's the time?
It's 10 to.
Okay. So I think that we can wrap up. It's going to take 10 minutes to save that long, big file now. Thank you, everyone. Last question. How does the quality of drawings affect the final report, i.e. no scale sketches?
That's the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if the sketch is not to scale, I don't think that's a major detractor from the report. But please, there were some design reviews where people put up essentially their notebook pages and said, this is our design. That will not be acceptable, right? So if people are submitting that kind of level material, then there will be quality loss penalties.
Expect the report is one that would go out to an external stakeholder. So would you be happy putting this on, the desk of someone from BHP or Woodside, saying, and branding your name on it? Hi, this is my work. This is representative of the kind of thing I produce. Please be mindful.
A drawing not to scale is perfectly fine as long as you put a note in it saying not to scale. As long as it gets the appropriate information across, that's all we really care about.
And high level, high quality.
Yes.
Just attention to detail, high quality. Doesn't need to be, perfectly to scale, but certainly a sketch in the books untypical.
Okay, I think that was it.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Take care, stay safe. I think this is the last lecture. I might put up we might have an info session next week. I'll make a note.
Sure.
Adrian doesn't have to turn up. Just if people have questions regarding, at the end of this week, they've got the review of the report, like you did in the previous report, and you've also got the interviews. So if you have any questions regarding that, you can ask us. So we'll be here for the info session, but there won't be a formal lecture.